Check out Negative Space again today. I haven't played it for a little while. It's been a game that has been sort of through the clinic a few times because we've had it on our community streams, and I wanted to just have a day where I played a game for an extended period of time, and I do really like this one, so let's check it out. My connection has not been great internet-wise past couple of days. I think it's because I'm moving and they're in the process of switching stuff over, so if we cut out a lot today and the stream stops working, I might stop running streams until after I've finished the moving process and just do some pre-recorded stuff instead. So today's a bit of a test, and tomorrow, if the stream doesn't work today, then tomorrow, instead of doing an Indies Under the Knife stream, I'll just pre-record the reviews, edit them down, and put them straight up, because I cannot be doing with these bad internet connections. So I've never played this. I think I did one long session on this before, but I've never actually finished a run, I don't think. So let's go for it. What does the first leader do? Refresh all available energy. On energy gain, buff all crew and hand +2. Okay. So we're all about getting energy. We can get all our energy back once during each game. Olibold. He's got a lot of debt. He's got to go into space again. It's a great way to do a intro story, to give a little bit of character to something without making people read loads of text or listen to loads of voiceover. Really, really nice. Okay. The busiest marketplace and tourist hub. So we play through a series of missions. We have some shots. Starsmith and Trash Chute. So this is the decision point. It's like, do you want to upgrade a card or do you want to get rid of one? We've got a perilous... If we go the upgrade route, we've got a perilous mission before we get to the space station. And this is kind of like a boss encounter where you have kind of traffic jams to contend with, I think it was. If I remember right from before. First real mission. That's how many days we've got left. Okay. This is all lovely and clear. This was all done with, like, when I played this last, this was all readouts right up at the top, and I think putting it down at the bottom actually makes a lot of sense, because it's sort of very front of mind. This is very front of mind now, which is like the most important thing in any kind of turn-based game with energy, because otherwise the player sits there thinking about their turn for ages and they don't realize they can't do anything. Okay, so that's how much they cost. That's their effort, which is kind of like an attack value against this green number up in the top right. So we do that. We get the stars. We use the stars to meet the quota, and we've got to meet the quota within the number of days. Yep. Lots of nice color coding between the keywords and the concepts in the tutorial as well. It'd be even better if we could have the icon for like this drawn in or the stars drawn in, but really good tutorial. Try not to give too much feedback today, but I know that's what people listen for, so we'll describe the things that are best practice in this game. Just click on that button down there to end the day, and it's just describing general deck builder mechanics now. I played a deck builder recently where the sort of mechanical innovation that the developer had tried to do was you don't discard your hand, and it just made the choices feel a bit meaningless, because discarding the remainder of your hand is what makes the choice of what to play more meaningful, because it's like you don't get to keep the rest of the things till the next turn. So you're not just choosing what to play, you're choosing what to throw away until it comes back round again. Morning, KP. Morning, Jin. Morning, Bob and Luke. I've got my multi-stream chat up on Streamlabs. It seems to be biasing towards Twitch at the moment. Might have to move platform again for multi-streaming soon. It's just not doing what it should do, but that might be my connection as well. Buff target and neighboring crew. I want the gizmo. Who's this? Gearhead. Buff this when a gadget is played. Ooh, well, I don't have a gadget yet, do I? I don't know if I've got any gadgets in my deck. No. So we'll start. We're going to build a gadget deck. But we need a gadget to do that. We need to start with getting a gadget. You don't want to do that, Dave. Cause little soul patch. Okay. Once per mission, we can get all our energy back. That's his power. No, I do think whatever cards you don't play get discarded is just a core part of what makes deck builders work. And if you take that out, then you really need a good design reason for doing it, because it's there for a reason. I think it's one of those. The game I saw that in. It's just one of those things where people have tried to do something different because they don't like the feature in the original game, but they haven't really understood why the feature is there, you know? Super crew. I really like how you've got the multiple layers of upgrading in this. You've got upgrading the deck, and you've got upgrading the deck, and then you've also got the upgrade of the cards in the hand as you play each match, and then they go back to normal again. You do have that a little bit in things like Slay the Spire, but it's not as pronounced. It's really pronounced in this one. So I've got 9 out of 10. My problem in this game is I keep wanting to buff my crew up and boost them when I don't need to, because I just really need to get that last star for the round. If a target is rolled, refund this. Oh, you get the energy back for that if it resolves one of the targets. Yeah, that's pretty good. Hulking crew costs less energy for every crew in hand. I'm not going to go for him because he doesn't synergize well with a gadget deck, right? Because with a gadget deck, I'm going to generally have less crew in hand. So we'll go for the careful crew. Bypass all restrictions. Top deck starts each shuffle on top of your draw pile. I mean, Balatro isn't really a deck builder, so I'm not comparing to Balatro. I'm comparing to deck builders like games like Dominion, and Balatro is poker, right? With some deck building as the meta games. I'm talking about Slay the Spire, and I'm talking about older deck builders like Dominion. Balatro isn't an archetypal deck builder, so you can't really use it to base your idea of what deck builders are on, because it has so many weird things about it, and that's because at its core it's poker and not a deck builder. Deck builders are, you draw 5 cards, you play some of them with some restrictions, the remainder get discarded, and then you draw 5 cards again. That's an entire genre of game. That's a really established way that deck builders work. If Balatro does something different, that's great, but that's because it's poker primarily and a deck builder secondary. I'm not saying it's not a deck builder. I'm just saying you should, if Balatro is the main deck builder you've played, you shouldn't base your idea of the genre on that, because it has a lot of quirks to it that aren't archetypal of what deck builders are and how they generally work. Enhances target with airlock, not discarded at end of day. Oh, these are like stickers that go on the... Are they? I don't think I've used them before. I don't think I've got far enough. I'm going to go the longer route and go through the perilous mission. Pick something you... Right, we're going to start collecting gadgets now. Oh no, we're not collecting, we're upgrading, right? I'm going to upgrade the wrench. Super duper wrench. Yes, this came out properly on Friday, I think it was, so part of the reason why I'm playing it this week. I wanted to come back and play it again. I've played this a few times during development, really liked it. Nice to get to check out a game at launch that we've been following for a while on the channel. So, right, buff the target crew 9. So we're going to do the buff on the cleanup crew, because the cleanup crew then buffs everything else. So the more upgraded we make this, the easier it is to buff everything else with it. So I just love the little chains in this. It's so good, and it ties so nicely into the theme of a crew working together. It's incredibly abstract and numbers based, and you can totally ignore the theme, but when you think about what the theme's doing, it actually kind of makes sense. Right, we want to make someone not discarded at the end of turn. Right, that's not going to get discarded, but I'm not going to get a chance to use it now. Oh no, I am actually. Okay, let's do that. We get our energy back from using the big guy. Yeah, I mean, I can't remember what the game was called that had the not discarding the cards. It does feel better, but it's also a choice structure thing to do with game rules, because if you don't discard them, then the initial decision you made isn't as meaningful, right? And the impact of the randomness of drawing 5 new cards is more pronounced if it's 5 new cards instead of 3 cards you kept from the last round and 2 new cards. Right, so the adaptation you're having to make to, because the thing about deck builders is they give a really good balance of strategy and tactics, right? The strategy is the long term, what do I put in my deck, and then the tactics is the turn to turn piloting of the deck. And if you're drawing less cards each turn because you'll keep holding over 2 or 3 cards from the last turn, that's great as an upgrade, but it shouldn't be the basics of the game, because then you're not getting the tactical crunch of, oh, every turn I have to deal with a different situation in terms of what's in my hand and what's on the board. That works fine. That, you know, keeping the cards in hand and saving them for later is a Magic the Gathering thing. It's a Hearthstone thing. Those games aren't deck builders. Those games are constructed deck dueling games, which are a different thing. We'll get another gadget, because we said we're trying to do a gadget leaning build. Telescope trinket. Buff all crew in hand when a target is resolved. Okay, that's cool. That was worth going the harder route, I think. Right, so this has a restriction. It can only be targeted if this is the only objective. So remember this one before. It keeps summoning traffic, and the traffic jam stops you getting to the space station. So you basically can't target it and get this number down when the space station is surrounded by traffic. I think I'm... Oh, hang on. We'll just do loads of buffing on the first turn. There's a great, what's his name? Tom Francis, who made Gunpoint and Tactical Breach Wizards. He has a video on something called consequence scope, which is like, you know, when you make a decision in a game, how far-reaching are the consequences? And the thing about whether you keep cards or discard them in a particular type of card game is an example of that, really. Because if you always get to save your cards for the next turn, then it basically means there's a smaller set of consequences for the choices you make on one turn. Really like Tom Francis' design videos. It's just like 5-minute videos of him talking to the camera, describing a game design concept. Very, very, very design focused. Very not, you know, sensationalist in any way. Do we want cadets? It could be helpful to have cadets because we're loading our crew, our ship up with not many crew, and picking gadgets every time. So a way to spawn cadets makes sense. I'm concerned that they come in a capsule though. That makes me think maybe there's some sort of Matrix or Warhammer 40k clone farming thing going on. Right, what's this? That's a shop where we can spend our star coin. I kind of want to go this route again. I want to go the upgrade route and the difficult mission, the perilous mission, because then we get an extra cool thing from doing that. Might as well take the higher risk reward things earlier on in the game. We get 1 energy tomorrow if we resolve a thing with that. Let's buff it. And then play that on there. So we're going to have a extra energy carrying over. So deck building games, Jay Marin, this is a difficult question because it's different for video games. So classically, a deck construction game is a game where making your decks of cards isn't really part of the match in any way, shape or form, right? So Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Magic the Gathering, all of those games are deck construction games. You're not making the deck as part of the gameplay. It's still part of the game, because you can't do it without it, but it's not what you do to play a match of the game. And then deck builders conventionally were games where you are building the deck as part of the gameplay. And if you look at a traditional deck builder, like Dominion, you're actually adding to or taking stuff away from your deck pretty much every turn. Video games tend to use deck building a little bit differently. And so they will have a duel situation, like in Slay the Spire or this, where you don't manipulate your deck that much, and then the deck building comes in between rounds and sort of fills in the role that picking a skill off a skill tree would do in an RPG, right? It's like you finished an encounter, you level up, and when we're leveling up, we do some deck building, right? So deck building in video games has generally been used quite differently, and I would say Party House in UFO 50 is the closest thing I've seen to like a traditional deck builder done in a video game format. I did a whole video on this that I'll link when I clip this or something, but yeah, so deck building, generally the deck building is part of the game. It is something you do as part of the gameplay, whereas in a deck construction game like a collectible card game or a trading card game, you build the deck before you play the game. But in video games, the deck building tends not to happen while you're playing the individual match or encounter. It's like in between to level up. Whereas if you go and play something like Dominion, which I think everyone should. I think everyone who wants to design games should have played Dominion or Hero Realms or Star Realms or one of those kind of classic deck builders, because that will give you a sense of how those games work and what the appeal is. Deck building in video games has gone down a particular route, and you can kind of go back in the genealogy and you can go, oh, what other sorts of deck builders could we do that are more based on Dominion? But a lot of it comes out of, if you're making a single player game that is a series of encounters strung together for like an hour, that is a different format, different kind of, yeah, it's a different format to sitting down at a table with 4 people and you all have the same set of cards and you do different things with them, kind of thing. So the way that the game is set up in terms of who it's for and the situation it's played in sort of determines some of the design stuff that then gives it particular kind of qualities. Basic Gamma Plus. What's Gamma Plus? Bag building, yeah. Team lead, adapt per crew in hand. No, I'm just gonna keep getting more gadgets. I'm going all in on the gadgets, and we're gonna go for at least 2 or 3 hours today. So if I screw things up with my gadget build, then I can, you know, do something more sensible next time. Right, I'm gonna buff up. What's the janitor from Scratchy, isn't it? The janitor from Futurama. I'm going to buff up Scratchy here. And I'm going to do it twice so that next time I can... Oh, I had a spare energy there. Buff every card containing basic crew in your hand. Are you a basic crew? How do I know which one's a basic crew? Oh, that's basic crew alpha, basic crew delta, cadet. Okay. Yeah, I love the art of this game. Reminds me a lot of Toe Jam and Earl, which that's a deep cut. I know that they tried to make a new one like 10 years ago or something. I don't know what happened with that. We've got 4 days left. So, a bit of a slow start on this one because I spent the first 2 rounds buffing stuff, but it seems to have paid off. Right, we'll do that, and then we'll play Scratchy on the big one. Everything else gets buffed. We've got a cadet that can do 10 now, that's great. So I really want to get some crew that synergize with the gadget build. I haven't seen any crew yet where they have keywords that are to do with gadgets. That gets buffed after you draw it into your hand, though. That's interesting. That's got 3 extra gadgets in it. That's quite fun. I'm going to go with him, though, because he's on a little spring, and that fits with all my gizmos. So, Carrot is a guy that is a gadget. Every 3 days, get a random snack. I love the trinket design in this as well. See, I've always been a big fan of like upgrades in games that don't just give you a little incremental 5% boost on something. Upgrades that give you a different rule exception or a different way a rule works and are like, when this happens, now this happens. And until I kind of started doing dev on my own again this year, I used to kind of cut devs a lot of slack because I thought, well, that's my preference, but I understand why people don't do it. It's really fiddly. You've got to do all this stuff. And then the game I've been working on, I kind of realized that actually a lot of these rule tweaks don't require a massive amount of work. Like, I don't know if Papa Murph is watching this stream. It would be interesting to hear how long it takes you to implement one of these trinkets or a new card or something like that, because these kind of games live or die on the amount of variety you can put in the deck of cards and the amount of trinkets and stuff like that. And being able to like iterate on those and come up with new ones very quickly is probably really important. Okay, we're going to buff here so we get all of these guys buffed. Oh, that wasn't neighboring because that was blocked there, which makes total sense. I don't know why I missed that. And then the Colossal Asteroid Field is summoning asteroids every day and gains atmosphere at the end of the day. I don't know what that means. I'm guessing it's going to be some kind of shield. Atmosphere. When effort is deployed here, negate it. Oh, okay. It's like a bubble shield type thing. So that's a good use case for my cadet. Just use the cadet to pop the atmosphere because the cadet doesn't cost any energy. Always be buffing Scratchy. I don't know if the asteroids are randomized effort or if they're nerf all crew and have -5 if it's still alive. Okay, so we do really need to get rid of that. Neighbor buff there so that the little guy gets some. Big guy on there because this one gets the energy back after we resolve something with it. Little guy there. Multiply target effort by 2, or I'll put that on the big guy. Boom. Yeah, you do have to architect for that stuff, you're right. So in Dirt World, I just have a big sort of data structure with all of the relics in. And most of the time, when the relic does something, it is just one place in the code that it does that thing. So, okay, this thing happens twice now instead of once, but it depends, you know. Resolve a target objective. It doesn't count towards your quota. That's helpful. Black hole. Create a copy of a target card for this mission. That sounds fun and broken. So although the black hole seems like the practical choice, it costs 2 energy and duplicating things is more fun, so I'm going to go with that. Joystick. 1 extra energy on odd days. Always good to get extra energy. Unused energy is added to the next day. That is less likely to happen. I feel like this will lead to more energy net overall. We're not doing the cultist run, so I'm avoiding all the cultist stuff. Thermopole. Completely frozen over and seemingly barren. Shards of ice threaten to destroy orbiting planets and adventurers. Hate it when that happens. I hate it when I get destroyed by orbital ice. What's that? Eyesore. On interaction, recycle random card in hand. Disgraceful. What's that? Peem and Huira. Neighbor buff. Boof. And that as well. Drippin. Drippin and Sparksel. These are great planet names. 10 out of 10 would go to all these planets. I'm trying to avoid doing eyesore because I don't want to lose one of my good cards. Yeah, that's a good point, Joel. The unknown amount of testing is the real cost. Multiply target effort by 2. Right. That adds aliens to the deck if I don't get rid of it. Don't know what that means, and I'm never going to find out. Playing a very xenophobic star captain here. I don't want no aliens on my ship. Root. It's like a ginger. Only the rightmost card in your hand can target this. Interesting. So if I boost that one, we've nearly got enough to hit that with. That's frustrating though, because that's one below what I need. And I can't buff that with that because it's not a basic crew. So I'm going to... What does that one do? Only the leftmost card in hand can target this. Okay. We're getting some funny restrictions in here. Yeah. The artwork staples the effect into your brain. I saw a talk about that. And they were talking about, it was the Magic the Gathering designers, I think it's a GDC talk, and they were talking about this Trojan horse card. And I think they changed the artwork from a Trojan horse to something else. And then it kind of broke people's understanding of what it did, because the Trojan horse thing explained the rules so well. Yeah, interesting area of design is like, you've got such a abstract mechanical game, and then how do the keywords and stuff relate to particular art concepts, you know? Recycling crew. Adapt this to cards recycled per mission. Do I have an interaction with that? What have we got? That's quarantine. Yeah, I don't have anything that is doing recycling, so we don't want that. Buff this 12 when any basic crew is played. We'll go with that guy. We go the hard route, or we go the shop route. I haven't been to a shop yet, so let's just go through the shop. Also, I think this third system is the furthest I've got when I played it in testing, so I would like to avoid the stuff that's going to kill me this time through. We don't want dagger stuff. The conveyor belt is fun. I quite like that. So this moves a card along in your hand and buffs it. So if you've got a card right over the right hand side of your hand and you conveyor belt it, you move it all the way over to the left and it upgrades loads. That's a really fun interaction. It's kind of following the sort of Hearthstone rule of what can we do that we couldn't do with real cards in the hand, and like forcing the cards to be in particular positions is an example of that. Like Hearthstone does it with the Demon Hunter cards, where they have a keyword called Outcast, where it only triggers if the card is on the left or rightmost position in the hand. That's a fun one. New Crewmancer, Necromancer. No, we don't want to kill our crew this time. Camera trinket, buff deployed crew. +5. Right, I'm gonna leave it at that. Oh, well, let's get the camera. Okay. Mission. Mindful Games said, do you enjoy big board games? If so, what's your favourite? I love board games. I used to regularly go to a local club for them, which is something I recommend. If you just want to learn more about game design in general, actually, but particularly if you're making games based on card or board games and you haven't played many, join a group for it. Because otherwise you have the problem where you either need to spend loads on board games and then you don't play them. Or, yeah, well, it's just the best way to get to play loads of board games. I haven't been for a while, but I like pretty much all types. I like kind of thinky Eurogame type games. So if you're not a board gamer person, we have this big broad distinction between Eurogames and Ameritrash games, which sounds a bit discouraging, like friend slop or whatever, but it's something said lovingly. And Ameritrash games are things like Fantasy Flight, Star Wars games, and the Cthulhu games they make that are like these big glossy games with loads of stuff in the box, and they're very much about simulating a sort of dramatic story experience. Whereas Euro games are things like Agricola, where you are thinking very hard about an economic puzzle. I lean a little bit more towards those. I always want to like those big Ameritrash games, but I always find myself thinking I wish I was playing a role-playing game instead. Like something like Mansions of Madness, where you're doing a Cthulhu situation and you're running these little characters around in a big mansion and, you know, fighting cultists and stuff. It has so many little piddly rules that are like, now you need to remember that the fire spreads to another room. And I just, whenever I find myself playing one of those games, I just think I would rather be playing a tabletop role-playing game and doing this through imagination rather than stuff on a board. But yeah, I do lean a lot more towards Euro games. Dominion is the type of game that I will just always play if someone wants to play it. I like dudes on a map type things like Blood Rage and stuff like that as well, where you've got like 3 or 4 people around a table and it feels really kind of tense and diplomatic. Inish was one of my favorite ones of those types of games. Do we want... I kind of just want the dog because it's a dog. Oh yeah, Americans call them Ameritrash games as well. So, what's it? Haunting... What's that game where you're in a haunted house and then it changes to a random thing each time? That horror game. That's like the quintessential Ameritrash game. And then there's like another tier of games that you would call beer and pretzels games, which are kind of like games that you can just learn very quickly and play for half an hour as well. Okay, I'm going to get the dog just because it's a dog. If leftmost in hand, buff this 5. If rightmost, retrieve 2. So it has a different thing it does depending on which side of your hand it is. And the if leftmost in hand rule synergizes well with our conveyor belt, because we can conveyor belt the dog along to the left to trigger that. House on Haunted Hill, yeah. Like, House on Haunted Hill has a fatal flaw in its design, which is that you get to the twist, and then someone has to read a special set of rules. And if that person is the person in the group that never has to read rules or interpret them for themselves, then you've broken the whole game after sitting there for like 30 minutes doing the build-up. Hi, Polyhedric. Oh, Spear was cool. I remember Spear. Spear was like a cool 3D platformer. I will have a look at your question in a second. Let's receive a powerful enchantment for your enhancement for your cards. Yeah, energy reduction. That's just easy for my brain to consume. Polyhedric said, any advice for making a third-person platform shooter? I mean, that's what Fortnite is. So base... I'm not saying this to be glib, but base all of your control and camera conventions on Fortnite. Make your mantling, you know, every part of the UX to do with how you interact with something in the environment or climb over it, the camera distance from the character, base it all on Fortnite, because Fortnite is your global standard for how the combination of third-person platform and shooting should work. You will have out of your target audience, they will all have played that. They will all get their expectations of what a good game with those two elements feels like from that. So however you feel about Fortnite, I would study it. I would base all of your control conventions, the 3 C's they call it, cameras, controls, character, all of how that stuff works, base it on that. And then you can branch out from there and adapt it and, you know, slow it down if you, whatever you need to do to it. But in terms of how the controls work and how things feel and where the camera is, I would base it all on Fortnite to start with. I know that's a very strange thing for someone to say on an indie games channel, but hey, we can learn from other types of games, as we've just, you know, had a 30-minute discussion about deck builders and Euro games. That's the neighbor buff. Let's put that over there and then put that one there. Right, what's happening here? Okay, this is our boss, so I need to understand how this works. We've got dying stars. When these revolved, when this is resolved, it makes the cards in our hand cheaper. So these are potential power-ups in a way. So we've got a boss that has loads and loads of health. We have to pop these to get cheaper cards to be able to play all of our cards. And this is constantly driving up the cost of our cards. That's interesting. So I use him first because we don't get any benefit for popping one of these with him in hand because he doesn't cost anything anyway. And he can't cost minus amounts. Same again. Won't use that one because they cost 0. So I'll use one of the ones that cost 1 to start off with. This guy retrieves 2 cards when I play him. So on there. This is a really cool boss design. Really, really neat. I can play all of these. I'm going to play a couple on there. Because I can't resolve that this turn anyway, so I might as well leave it. Jay Marin, if you're thinking about the overlap between D&D and deck building, I would check out... There's a digital implementation of this as well. I would check out the Pathfinder. So the type of game you're talking about in the board game space is called a living card game, an LCG. And this is things like the Arkham Horror card game. Netrunner was kind of one of these. It's a deck builder where you play some... I mean, the Arkham Horror one was kind of like an RPG that you play with a deck builder deck. And there is one that is Pathfinder, which is like a sort of D&D spin-off. And that is kind of similar to what you're describing. Each player has a deck of cards. If they're the warrior, they have a bunch of warrior moves and equipment and companions and stuff. And then you play through scenarios, but it's kind of multiplayer. I would look at that for some ideas. That will give you some good ideas. Okay. Scratchy is not so useful in this situation because we can't resolve anything with him. We've only got one basic crew in hand, so the crew university is not that helpful. He gets buffed when a basic crew is played, which is him. So let's go with that. Let's go you first. Then you. Then you. And that wasn't a very good round, but hey. The next card played costs 1 energy. Okay, costs 0 energy, sorry. There we go. We'll make this card retrieval, we'll make that free. I love the kind of deck manipulation stuff you do in a single match of this. It's really great. It's kind of like you have to remember what's in your deck and then you have to remember what you've done to your deck in that encounter. It makes it really crunchy. I think a lot of people will see like the art style of this and it's kind of got that childlike quality to it and not realize how crunchy and deep the game ends up being. Right. I'll pop this guy on here because he gets his energy refunded. Then everything in the hand is free. So we're going to copy... We'll copy... We'll copy the basic crew because otherwise I've been struggling to trigger that keyword this match. Okay, we've got 6 days left. I think we're on a run to do this. Look at this big guy, 55. Boom. Hey. Hi, Akan. How's it going? Connection seems to be okay so far today, which is good. Crucifier. Rare crew. We don't have dead crew, we're not playing with that. Add together buffs for all crew card in hand and redistribute them in equally. That's fun. And it quarantines, so the quarantine rule is basically you only get that card once. You know, you can only use it once during the encounter. That's kind of good because it thins out the deck for the rest of that encounter as well. 10-sided die. 1 in 10 chance to retrieve a card for every card played. Buff all crew in hand when a crew is killed. Next on 10 cards played, next card costs. I find these every 10 things do this cards always hard to remember when they proc. Like I find that really difficult in Slay the Spire. I'm going to go for it anyway. I just need to make sure I pay attention to how much energy things cost and notice when it's happening. Shop time. First card played at the start of the mission costs 0 energy. That's fun. We'll get a common crew. And I would have got another equalizing shot, but we can't afford it. Deploy this crew randomly at the end of the day. That's fun. Upgrade something. Gonna upgrade the conveyor belt. That's not as reliable as an upgrade as putting it on the janitor, but it's kind of fun if we get it to work. Anomalies. Okay. Let's see what it says. Planet effort increased by 1.5. Okay. Cool. Right, so this guy buffs whenever a basic clue is played. He costs 2 to play, so I'm going to put automate on them because now I don't have to pay that 2 and I'll still get the benefit. Good start. Buff target crew by 10. Put it on him. Upgrade him as well. And then pop. I feel like there's no run of this game where you wouldn't use the janitor a lot. He's kind of just, he's just the MVP. That's it. We're going to conveyor belt on this guy. Beefy now. And then we're going to copy him. I don't know why I did that. That's probably not the best way of using that card this turn. That's alright. Got some buffs for later. 3 days left. This one's going to be close, if we get it at all. Right. Buffs on this crew are doubled. Okay, so we're going to do a double conveyor belt on you. 67, that's great. Cool. Oh, this one's going to be close. Right, this guy refunds his energy, so we'll use him first. This one gives us extra energy on our last day. That might be helpful. Neighbor buff there. Not gonna do it. We got to get 4 stars. Oh no, if I can beat any of these. That puzzle is screwing me over. Less than 26. Okay. Oh, goodness. No. One of the restrictions made me discard my card, I think. I was lined up to do that, and then one of my cards got discarded, so I wasn't paying attention to what all of the different restrictions were. Ah. New guys, we're going to play as Starla next. So what did we unlock? Top deck. Starts each shuffle on top of a draw pile. Squeaky hammer. Makes all gadgets cheaper, but they can only be used once. Bobblehead. Perma buff after being drawn. So what does Starla do? She gains energy equal to the total cost of all gadgets in hand. I forgot to use my captain's ability on that last match. I was like, I know this is going to be hard. I know we could potentially lose. I still forgot that I had that special ability. Okay, so she is basically for playing a gadget deck. That's interesting. Fickle crew is a cat. Fishing pole. Crew fish. Crew statue. Okay. So many levels. What is Parsnippet? Change energy cost of leftmost card for 0 for the mission. We're going to go with that. And we're not going to play on the mode with 1 fewer day because I don't think I should try that until I'm getting all the way through. Okay, I think we're going to go with the stuff to do with killing crew this time. We're going to sacrifice our crew, so we're going to lean into all of those mechanics. We've also got an ability that reduces the cost of something when it's on the leftmost side of the hand, which I need to remember I can do. Should have upgraded that guy before I spent him then. Oh well, doesn't matter this early on. This is a recommended game. We've had this was submitted before a long time ago, and it's just been released properly on Friday. So I thought I'd come back and play it again and see where it's got to since then. I really, really like this game. Such a good combination of things. Right, we've got a willing sacrifice already. Crooked crew bypasses all restrictions. That's fun. Let's get one of him. Rather than doubling down on the willing sacrifice who can't really do anything yet. Because we don't have any way of killing them. Let's get the outlaw enhancement. We might be able to put that on our janitor at some point. That would be quite good. Yep, golden janitor. Cleanup crew. I know it's called the cleanup crew, but I would just always call him that. So I don't need to always play that enhancement that skips restrictions, because some of these earlier planets don't have any restrictions at all anyway. So I need to remember not to play that just because I've got it. Gonna get the equalizing shot again. So the camera means that when any crew has been played and they resolve a target, they get buffed for later on, I think. I think that's how that works. I'm not sure. Nice. So this is the one where I can only target it when these guys are in place. But this guy can target it anyway. He doesn't care. He's an outlaw. That's good theming as well. There we go. That was interesting. Totally different approach that time. Just had a couple of outlaw cards that let us ignore the restrictions and just go straight for the boss target rather than having to do the puzzle at all. Interesting. This temporarily upgrades one random card in hand when it resolves. That's cool. Golden Crew Runner perma buffs itself when it resolves its objective. So very weak starting card that gradually gets permanently buffed throughout the game. I quite like that. I think I'm going to go with that, and the reason being that I'm still very early in the game, so if you get something like that that is permanently upgrading little by little, getting it really early on makes sense. Every 3 cards played buff crew in hand by 3. Yeah, I'm going to go for that. Oh no, that's got an on-crew killed. Yeah, we're going to go for that, because we've got a couple of interactions with the kill keyword, so... Do you think allowing a player to hold on to remaining cards in their hand becomes more meaningful the more hands they have available? The way they can save cards for potentially more powerful combos. Yeah, again, that's how it works in like Magic the Gathering and Hearthstone and stuff. Meaningful is going to be relative, because in my mind, the thing that makes it it's more meaningful usually to throw the cards away because the decision that you're making has more consequences, right? So you have to think through the consequences of the cards you're playing and also the cards you're choosing to not play that turn. So it's just to do with how many different consequences there are for the player to think through. That's the distinction I was sort of trying to make earlier. Let me find the game that I played that didn't have hand discarding. Let's see. I can't even look back through my own thing to find it in on my channel because we've played so many games. It's just not going to find it. Not Hellcard. Hellcard was alright. I didn't mind Hellcard. I bet it's still in my library if I look for it. Give me a second. I'm just looking back through my I'm just looking back through streams to find out where the last stream where we focused on deck builders was. At some point we did a stream that was just some deck builders. The one I want to show you was... yeah, Arcane Path. Is it not on Steam anymore? So this is the game, and I think I've seen this on other people's channels. Maybe it's been submitted to bite me or something. This is the game I was talking about that I played where it didn't have card discards and it just broke the whole format. Because instead of going, oh, on this turn I'm going to play these two cards and then I have to throw these other two cards away even if they're really good, it's just a smaller decision to go, okay, whatever I don't play this turn I will still have next turn, right? I think... one of the things that's different between a deck builder where you generally draw 5 cards, play some and discard some and then draw 5 cards the next turn, and a constructed deck dueling game like Hearthstone is Hearthstone has, like, every game can be a long control game where you get up to like 10 rounds. So the idea of like having a card in your hand that costs 8 energy to play or 5 energy to play and saving it for later is more of a thing, whereas in deck builders it's tends to be much more like the cards have smaller incremental value and each turn it's about reading the situation rather than planning ahead so much. So yeah, I would play, if you want an example of what I'm talking about, play Arcane Path if it's still on Steam, because it just felt really dull to every turn be able to basically, it's like I'm either playing this card this turn or next turn, and nothing really has any meaning then, because the negative part of the decision of like what to miss out on is part of the decision of what to play, you know? Yeah. Yeah, and the gamble you're talking about can be totally valid. Like in Hearthstone, if you're trying to play a control deck and you're like holding out to play this massive card, it might never get there, right? But that's also a format where you're playing with the same deck over and over again, and I think that's maybe significant, because in a single player digital deck builder, you're not playing with the same deck over and over again. You're playing a string of a string of gradually more difficult encounters, and that means the encounters are slowly getting longer and more complex, and that means that towards the end of that you might want a game format where you keep hold of cards and you save them for later and stuff. But for the first half of a run in a game like Slay the Spire, you don't actually want that. You want it to be snappy and quick turnaround. So again, it's a difference in format. A game where you play with the same pre-constructed deck of cards over and over again against different people, like Hearthstone or Magic the Gathering, versus a game where the deck building is happening between rounds, the deck is constantly changing, and you want to get through the deck quickly as well. You know, that's part of the format. You start with a deck that only has like 10 cards in, and you draw 5 every turn, and that means that in the first 2 turns you know you've seen every card. It's just the set of cards you get in your hand each time is different, and then when you combo that with who you're fighting or whatever the encounter is, then you get different permutations. So keeping the cards in hand, not discarding the heart cards and drawing back up to 5 again is going to slow the general churn of the deck throughout the match as well, which again interacts with the deck building in a not great way, because if I'm only like getting rid of the 2 cards I play instead of in my turn, if I'm only getting rid of the 2 cards I play in my turn instead of the 2 cards I play and the 3 cards I don't play, then we get through the deck more slowly, and then the deck is less reliable in terms of what happens when you add things to it. You know, if you've got a deck of 20 cards and you get through 5 of those cards every round, then you know that in 4 rounds one of those particular cards will come back round, right? So the deck building thing you're asking the player to do, which is kind of like engineering this thing over time, is more predictable because of the draw 5 cards and next turn you'll have a 5 totally different cards rule, than if you kind of build things the Hearthstone way. So there's a bunch of different things fitting together here, and it's to do with the format of the game, which isn't genre, right? Like format in terms of what is a match of this game, like sitting down to play a duel against another player with the same deck over and over again, versus a single encounter within a run with deck building happening between the matches. All leads to different needs in terms of the moment-to-moment mechanics of what happens when you draw cards and stuff like that. So I think it all comes down to, whenever you want to modify one of these or make it different, understanding what the original design does. Because people just go into this, and I think this is the case with Arcane Path, where I said before I don't think this works in its current form. And I think it's what they've done here is they've taken a feature they don't like. We don't like discarding our cards at the end of the turn, and because they don't like that feature, they think they're being kind to players by taking that feature away. But the feature does a particular thing to make the game format work, and if you sort of don't understand what it's doing in the first place, then taking it away is going to break the game format in some way that you don't understand, right? So it's why it's really kind of important to understand the genre space you're working in and what things do, because you might just not like them at a kind of gut reaction level, like a kid that doesn't like brushing their teeth. But the game needs it in some way, and if you can't look at the underlying way that mechanism works to make the entire genre or format work, then you're going to struggle with how to manipulate that and do different things with it, because you'll take something out and not realize that it's load bearing, you know. Have we got anything that lets us kill crew? No. When recycled, permabuff self by 3. I'm going to go for the fish, just because it's weird. I haven't played Wild Frost yet, no. I would like to. I just love that conveyor belt. If this resolves its objective, it gets perma-buffed. Okay, I'm gonna use that on Eyesore, even though... So some of the planets don't necessarily have the same restrictions each time, because Eyesore had a restriction last time. I will check out Wild Frost. The last one I got super into was... I really liked Roguebook. I didn't play it for as long as Slay the Spire. Like, Slay the Spire I've gone back to multiple times, whereas Roguebook I felt like once I'd mastered it, I'd just worn it out and I didn't want to play it anymore. But I did really like Roguebook. I liked the way that the having two characters worked together. I didn't get on very well with Monster Train. I found Monster Train a little bit too fiddly. It's like too much of it was the units on the thing and not enough of it was the cards, you know. We just need one more star. Crew bar. Buff effort values of crew in hand by 16 split evenly. Buff all crew in hand by this card's value. Interesting. That's cool. And that buffs each time you use it as well. Let's go for the crew bar. Yeah, I should give Monster Train another try, really, but I think it's like, sometimes, like, the theming and the art, if the game is too complex in a particular way that I don't initially gel with, and the theming and the art is not good for me, then I sort of don't have enough to go on, you know? And I didn't really love the theming and the art with that one either. Like, I'm occasionally mean about the art and theming in Slay the Spire, but it does actually work for it that it's so strange and sort of that weird science fantasy world, because it means that nothing is sort of exactly what you expect it to be, and that works quite well. It sort of sets a good expectation for what the rest of the game is going to be like or about. Whereas Ghost Train was just immediately like hardcore standard fantasy with crusaders and stuff. Oh, whatever. Not my bag. He gets a perma buff. You get a perma buff, and you get a perma buff. I think the thing it's really worth learning from Slay the Spire if you're making a game like that with loads of cards and relics in is just it's really good at scheduling the content so you don't start with an overwhelming amount of stuff. And that's how you tutorialize a game like this. It's just give the players a simple set of stuff so that you don't have to tutorialize too much at the beginning. And then by the time you start giving them the more complex stuff, they're going to be quite happy to just work out what a card does by reading the tooltips and stuff rather than having to teach everything explicitly. Enlightened Alien. Deploy this crew. If target is overexerted by 2x, multiply the effort of all crew in hand. Okay. So we want to upgrade this guy, do a massive overkill in terms of the effort, and then that doubles the rest of the crew. That's fun. That's fun. Extra mission, extra day on each mission. That's sneaky. When played, create an ejecting copy. Yeah, that's fun. I do think these look a bit too much like a regular card, but whatever. Let's upgrade something. I'm gonna upgrade my crooked guy. Just buff everyone. Just big old buff. It is very Sega Genesis. Yeah, it's just like early 90s Nickelodeon kind of. It's this music style as well. So this is let's do some cultural studies. What's it called? So the style of music in this is very similar to the Streets of Rage music, just like softer, right? Which is like... Is it going to play? Can't hear it. Oh, it's because I've got this muted. It's this kind of stuff. This is what I'm talking about. So this is New Jack Swing, right? Which is like... This was a big deal at the time. It was weird for a game to like emulate real life club music that wasn't like this is New Jack Swing, which is like this type stuff. Right? So you had New Jack Swing and then you had Streets of Rage doing New Jack Swing in its soundtrack. right? But like an 8-bit version. And then also you've got, yeah, Toe Jam and Earl, which is probably the other closest reference, which was such a weird game. Like, the sequel to this was a pretty standard platformer, but this game was, like, so weird. Just, like, not any particular genre, just this strange cooperative. So funky. Let's just jam out to Toe Jam and Earl for a second. This is the kind of game that always inspires me a lot, because I know if I went back and played this, it would probably be like objectively a bad game. But there's something about the creative direction and just the quirkiness that makes me think like, yeah, I would like more people to make more games that look and feel like this, even if I wouldn't necessarily want the gameplay to be whatever this was. This kind of looks like what if Don't Starve was also the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air at the same time. The Genesis sound chip could also do Slap at the Bass, apparently. I'm just pretty sure that's just straight up a Faith No More song right there. Oh look, it's just like seamless transition back into this. Done it. So I'm quite excited about that cult leader type character with the overexert keyword. So the kind of cult leader that's going woo every time I overexert by like 100%, it doubles everything in my hand. That's going to be really fun if we can pull it off a few times. Trash something. Is the fact that Mike Patton a huge fan of the Crash Bandicoot soundtrack well known? I don't think it's well known, but it's totally unsurprising. Okay, so the enhancements that you put on the card stay permanently. I didn't realize that, but that makes sense. Let's get rid of this basic crew. Okay, so this is the one where each of these reduce our cost of our cards in hand. So we want to do... Oh, that was stupid. There we go. Want to make this guy free. Oh, difficult. So he's going to freeze all of these and make them cost more next turn. Really interesting boss puzzle, this one. You really want to play the entire hand on this boss every time when you can. 5 days left. Okay, we should be alright. My good old egg timer. My game's got an egg timer trinket as well. Except in Dirt World, it's called the Ovum of Kronos. Draw 2 cards, set their cost to 0. When recycled, double this card's effort. I don't... Recycle hand, retrieve 5 cards, quarantine this card. Yeah, I'm going to get the auto button. That's fun. Just like discard your whole hand and redraw it. This is out now, Seamus. This came out on Friday. Transform all basic crew into willing sacrifices. I already got rid of a basic crew though, so that feels like it's not good value. I'm going to do it though, because we said we were going to do cultist stuff this time. Good start. I'm gonna do the Ono button. Overexert there, double these guys. Yeah, that's good. That's the good stuff. Won't get to use them for a little while, but... got some good buff combos built into this deck now. Okay. That ignores thingies. Might as well do that. 2 stars left. Look at this guy, 78. 12 per shuffle this mission. So it's because we've shuffled the whole deck 3 times. Powerful. Powerful card. Didn't even think that one was going to be a particularly good card when I chose it, but... it's because we've also got the discard your hand. So the oh no button with the guy that increases power with being shuffled. And we're going to be killing crew at some point and getting rid of them. So we're going to thin our deck down, shuffle it more times. Shuffle guy is going to become really powerful. Suspicious crew. Don't know if that's supposed to be a tentacle on a crew, but it looks kind of like a glove puppet. I guess that's the same thing, but... adapt this per dead crew in hand. Right, we're going down that route. I haven't got any way to kill my crew yet, but we're going to go down that route. On mission failed, get a 2 extra days and remove this. That's helpful. That's kind of bring you back to life when you fail type thing. What does that do? When resolved, nerf all crew in hand 1. Okay, so we want to avoid doing that one for as long as possible. What does that do? Multiply effort of all crew in hand by... Okay, so this one we need to make sure we resolve it at the start of a turn so that we don't make our crew really good and then discard them straight away. Interesting. That guy's taking our energy away next turn. Poop. Oh, I don't have enough energy to play them. Poo. It's because they keep taking an energy away at the start of the next next turn. Stinky. Okay. Maybe we got a bit of... Maybe we got a chance here. $39, what does that do? Yeah, let's get rid of that one with the restrictions on it. Oh. Phew. Close one. We do have our ejector seat though, so we can fail once. Get a really good first hand because that soda makes your first card cost 0, so you need to sort of play it on someone that only costs 2. Costs more than 1 to get the value out of it. Mr. Red, I talked about that multiple times already. I'll cut the clips out later and I'll make a video about it. I talked about it for like a million years earlier. Right, I need to focus on this because this is the one that's actually going to make us win. Okay, it buffs itself by summoning these guys. Oh, so we do need to get rid of them. But we still need to try and pop some of that Dang, this is hard. It's also saying creepy stuff up there. Should have I no buttoned. I'll use it next time. Okay. Look at that! That's ridiculous. What am I supposed to do about that? It's got 400! No! Oh. Desperation time. Just start whacking it, ignoring the crew. That needs a cap, surely. Ridiculous. No. This hasn't been good. No chance. Oh, you know what? I've forgotten about the power again. Every time. Every time I forget about this. I only remember it after I've died or when I'm very close. Right, we're going to do one more run. And then I'm going to do something more productive for a little bit. We've got Jack Mustard. He can recycle hand and retrieve that many cards. And then they cost less. Okay. I need to remember to use it. I don't know. I don't think this is necessarily the game's fault. There might be some UX way of reminding you that the ability exists. But it's definitely a problem I've had before. But it might be just something that you learn over time. So I'm going to like actively try and use this. I'm going to use it now even when I don't need to use it. Because it's still going to be useful because it reduces the energy cost. So let's just use it at the start. And we have a one-day thing. And then we've got loads of more coins. We get more coins, don't we, for finishing earlier? Okay. That's going to be my strat with Captain Mustard, is just play the ability right at the start. More energy the next day if he resolves an ability. If he resolves a target. Let's go for that. Straight away. Straight off the bat. Okay, so using his ability on the first turn to learn to use the ability and remind myself to do that. But I think it might actually just be working as a general strategy anyway. Because we're getting through these early ones really, really quick. Who's that? Crew cannon shoots crew. Quarantine a crew. Exert 35 effort randomly. That's fun. Deploy this crew. Add a cadet to the deck for this mission with this card's effort. I want the crew cannon. I want to shoot a little guy out of a thing. So that airlock means that a card doesn't get discarded. That's quite fun. We can use it to sort of manipulate the hands and hold things over. Let's upgrade the navigator. So they give us 2 energy the next day if they resolve something. Or maybe we made him cheaper. I'm not sure what the upgrade was there. Right. I haven't used the ability yet. I'm going to use it next turn, I think. I don't want to put that on any of those guys. Because this is permanent, right? The enhancement stays for the rest of the game. I'm going to put it on the crew cannon. That there. That's a good way of making use of cards that are too expensive as well. Like, oh, I've got a 2 cost card. I can't play it. Just shoot out the crew cannon. That's a good value. Buff all crew in hand. So when we resolve a target... Ah, okay. Buff all crew in hand. +1 per boss mission completed since this was in your inventory. That's what we needed for that last boss that killed me. Because every time we popped one of the corroded crew, it would buff the whole crew in hand by like 2. That would have been really helpful there. Okay. Right, remember the ability, but we're upgrading Scratchy first. Then we're going to crew cannon them. Oh, yeah, so because the crew cannon is random, it can hit ones that we can't target at the moment. Because this restriction means I can't target it when I have these in place. But the crew cannon just let me kind of randomly hit it. Right, we're going to use the ability now, because then we get a load of cheap cards. Pop. Just get like a whole hand of cards that mostly cost nothing when I use this ability. That's pretty good. But I have to use it straight away, otherwise the value reduces because you're only drawing 3 or 4 cards. Buff this per dead crew in hand. Then quarantine them. Deploy this crew. Okay. Let's try it. I still want to do a run where we kill all of our crew. It's fun. Increase maximum hand size to 10. I can't say I've noticed that being a factor so far, but I'll go with that because it's a simple passive that I don't have to think about. I always find this with deck builders. If I play multiple runs, the second or third run I play, I'm just like, please just give me the simplest option out of these cards. Right, we want that one to work, so let's do that so we get more energy next day. And crew cannon that guy. We've still got one more to spend there. That was a good first turn. Right. And this turn I think we'll use the ability. Get a really cheap hand. In there. Wonderful. Crew cannon's great. I'm always a bit wary of like abilities with random targets and stuff. I always want to have too much control. I particularly hate random discards. Can't play Warlock at all in Hearthstone. I just find it the loss aversion aspect of it really painful. But the crew cannon is working pretty well. It targets a random enemy when you trigger it, and it's always going to be something you need to take some points off. So it's not such a bad RNG feeling. Right, this guy gets buffed when he's drawn, which synergizes quite well with our captain ability. So let's go with that. Upgrade something. I should have used the power then, because I had a full hand of stuff I could discard and then just basically have another turn free. We're not going to do that here because we've got some quite cheap guys that only cost one, so let's save the ability this time. Wow, that was a good turn. Look at this guy. Neep. Didn't need to use the ability this time, but I was thinking about it. Let's play this right at the start, because we just want to chuck as much stuff at this as possible, so... before it gets its shield up. There we go. Yeah, working out the best time to play the ability is cool. Oh, 3 left. Oh, that was a bad move there. I wasted 2 energy just to pop the shield. Done. Okay, we've got another overexert card. I quite like these. So if we overexert by twice, we get extra energy. If we overexert by 3 times, we buff all crew in hand. I don't know if you get both of them if you do it by 3 in hand. By 3 times. But, let's try that. On crew killed, turn into undead crew instead. That's fun. Still don't have anything that kills the crew, though. Very hard to build that synergy I tried to do a crew kill run last time and it was just like I didn't get any way to kill them. Upgrade him. Brocco the broccoli planet. Well, hey. It's interesting as well, the kind of encounter design that you get in this game, because instead of because it's based on those stars, you just have a constant queue of stuff appearing, right? Which is slightly different from you're just kind of wearing down the enemies until they're at 0. It makes the whole thing feel quite different. Let's get an extra cleanup crew. Just always good to have, especially if you're murdering your crew all the time. Need a good janitor. Triumphant crew, training boots. Cadets in a capsule, that's funny. I'm gonna get the recruiter. He gives us a cadet. Are there any mechanics you think deck builders don't utilize enough, or mechanics you want to see implemented that you haven't yet? I don't know, it's an interesting one, because I think what people get out of deck building games is like the challenge of learning this whole system, right? So you give them a mechanism that they already understand. If we look at what's going on with this game, with negative space, I understand draw 5 cards, play some cards, draw some different cards next time. I understand relics from other games. I understand all this. And then the stuff I'm learning is like, when do I use my ability? What are the different restrictions on these challenges that I need to adapt to? So I don't know, it's less like there's a grab bag of mechanics I'd like to see people try, because I think every deck builder needs to present this new puzzle of like, how do you learn to master this system, you know? And this isn't unique to deck builders, it's any kind of game with a strategy or like a build order in. It's about giving people this big possibility space of all this stuff you can do, and then work out yourself what's the best way of manipulating all this stuff. Even if you go back to like old Final Fantasy games, they change the whole system every time, and that's because the joy of learning one of those games is learning the system of like, how do I optimize my party and their abilities and stuff like that, rather than it just being like, here is a game with the same system and different content in it, right? That's the reason why you get some of these franchises like Final Fantasy games where a sequel is a fundamentally different game at a systems level, because that's what fans of the genre want. They want to play a game and learn a new system. That's why it's going to be interesting to see what Slay the Spire 2 does, because it's like, I don't just want to learn Slay the Spire with a different set of cards. I want to learn new rules, you know? And the thing with Slay the Spire is each character has markedly different mechanics to learn. So that's even just within one game. It's like playing the red, green or blue class isn't just, oh, you start with slightly more attack or new slightly more attack or slightly more defense. You start with a fundamentally different set of rules to learn for each character, and that's kind of what you're chewing your way through as you master these games. Rogue Book is the same. Like in Rogue Book, you get 2 characters together, and it's about how do these two cards interrelate, and these two sets of cards interrelate and react. So yeah, it's new relationships between mechanics. That's exactly it. And I think you want to keep as much of the base of the genre the same as possible, right? I'm sure there are interesting things you could do with how you draw and discard cards, but that's not really where the interesting part of the game is. The interesting part of the game is like all these variations in like things to learn about and things that can be different each time, you know? Because I think if you just make one big thing fundamentally different, like, oh, instead of fighting enemies until their health is all the way down, we're going on missions and to score stars, which is what we're doing here. That's great, but then you still need to have all of that other variety that makes the game this kind of big mess of puzzles to learn through and strategize through to kind of feel like you're mastering it. So I don't know. I'll have a think if there are any standout mechanics I would love to see, but I kind of don't really think of games as separate mechanics, you know? It's a big interconnected mess of all the things, and how good a particular game feels is going to be about how those things relate to each other in context. You know, you can't just grab a mechanic I like and stick it in a game and then I like that game. It's just not how it works. Yeah, so Slay the Spire 2, I haven't really followed it. I don't know what they're doing with it, but you know, if you look at like Darkest Dungeon, not a deck builder, but some of a similar audience in some ways, they just went in a totally different route with the second one, because I think their approach with Slay the Spire was people already have Slay the Spire, so we might as well make a different game with some of the same DNA, some of the same IP, characters, creative stuff, but make a game that is structurally fundamentally very different, because the people that want to play Darkest Dungeon are still playing Darkest Dungeon. I still dip back into it every now and again and start a new game. It's still good at what it needs to do. So there's that problem when you've got an indie game which is a forever game, which is what we're often encouraged to make, right? Make a game that's just infinitely replayable. It's like, okay, what's the sequel then? What is different about the sequel? Do we go in a totally different direction? You know, what would Spelunky 2 have been like if it had thrown out more of the original Spelunky DNA and just been a totally different type of roguelike and not a platformer or something like that? It's an interesting challenge when you've got such a beloved, endlessly replayable game. Like, how do you even approach doing a sequel at all in that kind of context? Oh yeah, I know you're not implying that you can just jam a mechanic into any game. I just can't. It's hard for me to think of whether I like a mechanic outside of its context, you know. That's why we call them. The interesting thing, we were talking about tabletop earlier. In tabletop, they don't refer to an individual game mechanic as a mechanic, they refer to it as a mechanism. And then the mechanics is like the overall relationship between all the mechanisms in the game. Whereas in video games, we're much more likely to refer to an individual unit of interaction as a mechanic. But the thing about mechanisms is they have to be moving together. And the example I would use is like, if you see a gear, like a cog, you can see that it's meant to be mechanical because of the way it's built, right? But it doesn't actually become mechanical until it's interlocking with other cogs and moving around in a system. And like the whole language of mechanics and mechanisms is meant to imply that these things are all interrelated. So it's often very hard to say, what game mechanic do you like? Or what would you do with this game mechanic? Because it's like, well, the game, I would use that game mechanic in a different way depending on which game mechanics are already there, what the theming of the game is, and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah. But I mean, if I was trying to make a deck builder, I would start off with the recognizable core that like everyone knows. I would pick a theme that I find exciting, and then I would iterate out from the theme and go, okay, well, in this game we're playing as this type of character, or we're doing this type of challenge, so we'll experiment with this type of mechanics, you know. I don't know. I have an idea for a deck builder I would want to make, but it's not very it's not super out there in terms of like how it approaches that genre, you know. I think the problem for me with talking about these things is I tend to like really weird out there games, but I often find that when people aren't very experienced try to make a really weird out there game, they kind of put the emphasis on the wrong thing. And that's just always the risk with when you try and do something weird and out there. It's just like the game innovates in a strange direction that doesn't capture what's exciting about the base genre. So I often think if you're trying to do something innovative in a genre, or you're trying to mix genres together, you still need to have that, like, that idea of going back to the basic design pillars of what does someone who likes this type of game like to do, right? So like the most negative example I could give is if you take a hardcore strategy genre and you say, oh, this is that, but without the hardcore strategy. And it's like, well, what is it then? Because you've taken that part out. So for me, a deck builder, the appeal of a deck builder is you're doing the long-term strategic planning of gradually adding this stuff into your deck, which is somewhat limited by a bit of randomness because you never just get to pick from all of the cards available, right? And then you have the turn-by-turn tactical piloting of the deck as you play. And I think you can make nearly any change to the formula, but it still needs to acknowledge the appeal of those two things together. That's, to me, what a roguelike deck builder is achieving. So, for example, a design tweak that would go against that, in my mind, would be when you deck build, the cards you get just don't feel significantly different from each other, right? They are just like... they're just like, this is +1 to this, or this one is +1 to this. And they don't really change how the thing feels to pilot in the game. That, to me, would be an example of a bad mechanical change because it's starting to take you away from the core appeal of why you put those things together in the first place. So I think that would be like the criteria I would use. If anyone wants to make a deck builder and do something weird with it or change how something works, it's like, you always come back to that question of how does this fit into the relationship between the long-term strategic deck building and the tactical turn-by-turn playing of the cards, right? And that's, like I said earlier, that's the issue with not discarding and redrawing 5 cards every time, because that doesn't fit into a deck builder, because that means that you don't reliably churn through your deck really fast, right? Whereas in something like Hearthstone, where you keep all your cards in your hand and you draw one more card every turn, that works for a deck construction game. It doesn't work as much for a deck builder, because it means that instead of drawing 5 cards every time, you're drawing 1 card every time. And as your deck gets bigger, you're even less likely to pull out one of those cards that you added to your deck before as one of your rewards or upgrades as you move through the game, right? So that's an example of, I'm not just saying this to say you should discard your hand and draw up to 5. I'm saying it to say that any modification you make to that rule needs to be thought of in terms of this context of like, okay, we're adding cards to the deck over time. That's a strategic decision. And that strategic decision filters down to the turn-by-turn tactics of drawing the cards and playing them. And it does it in a higher volume if we churn through the deck quicker. And if we slow down the churning through the deck, then when I get to pick a card to add to my deck, I'm just going to like go, oh yeah, whatever. Because in a match, when I have like 5 rounds in this game, just like 5 rounds to... If my deck is suddenly massive and I only get 1 card out of it every time, then the cards that I add to my deck suddenly become a bit irrelevant, because I'm only going to draw like 10% of them. Whereas with the draw and throw away format, you are drawing through your whole deck multiple times. So it's just one example, but it's like you can do anything innovative with a genre, but you always need to come back to like, how do all the parts of this type of game fit together? And the thing I'm trying to do with it that I want to do that's different, what impact does this have on the overall structure of that thing? And then you can think about that in relation to audience, right? So taking a genre and trying to make it more casual by making an element of it less skill-based or more random, that kind of thing. Taking an element of it and making it more casual by reducing how big the consequences are for doing particular things or whatever. There's so many factors you have to think about. And it all just comes back to not changing things just because you want to be different. Changing things with a theory about what that change is going to do for your game and how it's going to push it more in this direction of feeling this way or in this direction of feeling this way. And then you test that, and the best way to test that, you know, is to do a paper prototype if you're making a turn-based game. Test it with a spreadsheet, test it with Tabletop Simulator. Just test it a lot before you go and make a really polished game out of it. Just seeing what people in the chat are saying. Mana Shield. People thought Vampire Survivors innovated a genre, but they generally just refined an existing genre to perfection. Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And I think this is why I don't believe in the game dev meta of, like, find out what's hot right now and make one of those. Like, I think that's just fundamentally not understanding how to make a good thing, because the people who are best equipped to make the best new X in a genre are often just the people who are really into that, right? And so if you kind of try and jump into making something where you don't really understand how that type of game works, you're not going to do well. You need to take something that you're like a really big fan of and work on, like, how would I make the best version of this? How would I make the best new entry into this design space? I haven't played Dungeons and Degenerate Gamblers. That's the the blackjack one, isn't it? I do. The thing is, I don't really know a lot of I've never really like got into playing traditional gambling games like poker or blackjack, but I do really like push your luck mechanics in games. I don't know if you played the board game Clank. The board game Clank is like a deck builder where you use your deck to move around a dungeon and pick up treasure and stuff, and then there's a resource called Clank, which is like how much noise have you made, and then the dragon uses it to locate you and burn you, basically. That's a really nice way of doing push your luck mechanics, I think. There's no way I can finish this one. I just don't have enough. Oh no, I can. No, I don't have that die once relic anymore. That was the last run. Failure. Yeah, Clank is fun. What's the last new genre or weird game you found that was really exciting and new to you? I mean, I only played Vampire Survivors in the last year, so I put that off for a long time. I quite liked that. I liked what that was doing. Let's see what's on my wish list. Don't know if some of these things are from years and years ago. I generally don't think about games in terms of genre. I think about genre a lot because we have to talk about it because it's something people are interested in and want to discuss. But I tend to find the games I like are just games that stand out in their genre. I play a lot of roguelikes, but that to me is stopped being a game genre and it's more of a format. It's just the fact that it's a run-based game. right? And I like a run-based video game for the same reasons that if I like a board game, I like to own the box and get it out and play it multiple times. It's the same sort of thing. So, you know, a run-based game is just a game where you could theoretically finish the entire game in 45 minutes or whatever. And you won't because of the way it's balanced and designed and everything. But so to me, roguelikes nowadays aren't even really a genre anymore. They're a format, and that format is like this meta level, like how do you engage with that game over a period of time type thing. I don't know what I've been sort of super excited about recently. I mean, I played Blueprints and then immediately started making a game with room drafting in myself because I think drafting is really interesting, which is like, it's got some of the same DNA as the Vampire Survivors. Pick one of these three things. I'm gonna load my game up because someone earlier was asking what it was and hadn't been into any of my dev streams. So let me just open that now. But yeah, I'm interested to see what people do with that Blueprints format now that Blueprints is out. The guy was working on it for like 8 years. And Blueprints is based on these tile-laying board games like Carcassonne and Castles of Mad King Ludwig, where you put tiles down on the board and build a place. Rob Bobbin said, knowing you can make a living making games that are a bit rough around the edges on short dev cycles is really valuable knowledge, particularly when most devs... Yeah. Well, I think the reason why most devs have unrealistic dream games is because they're not actually indie gamers. They're like an artist or a software developer that likes a certain type of AAA games. So they're like, I want to make Dark Souls. And it's like, well, that's not really an indie game. So I think that's where a lot of that stuff comes from. So this is my game. I took the room drafting from Blueprints and I put it in Spelunky. And we've got and we ended up with kind of Dizzy Egg on crack. That's kind of where we ended up. This is going to have a load of like weird puzzle chains in it and stuff. I'm just going into Dirt World for a minute because it's sort of thinking about how we're going to have a load of drafting games now because Blueprints. And I hope they don't all just try to be Blueprints because that game is an absolute masterpiece. And I think drafting mechanics are really interesting in their own right, and they don't necessarily have to be used in exactly the same way as how that game does it. I just absolutely described Mana Shield in the chat with my Dark Souls thing. Yeah, so there are like indie game genres, right, that are only in the indie space. There are not AAA walking simulators. There are no AAA roguelike deck builders, really. I mean, there are more polished ones like Roguebook. And this is because there are genres of game that have been created out of scope constraints of a indie studio, right? And you will tend to find when someone is an indie, I was going to say actual indie gamer, that's really sneering. But when someone is a really big fan of indie games and they start game dev, they have a realistic expectation of what they can make. Because they're not like, the only indie game I have ever played is Hades, which is like a massive operation, right? When people only really play bigger games and then they're like, I want to make a game, and then you show them what games made by 2 or 3 people look like, they're like, well, I don't want to make something like that. And it's like, well, you're one person and that game was made by 3 or 4 people and they used the scope constraints. They made a game with no characters in, or, you know, whatever it is. Like, I talk about this endlessly on this channel, so sorry if I'm repeating myself, but look at Dredge and look at Pacific Drive, right? Both quite polished indie games, but still indie games nonetheless. They are both kind of vehicular fantasies where in one you're driving a little boat around, in one you're driving a car. They have no human characters in them, right? Pacific Drive has voices over the radio. Dredge has illustrated characters that pop up when you're in a town. that is an example of the kind of constraint-driven thinking that indie game developers have to do. And if you don't play indie games, you don't have that in your mind as like, oh yeah, look at this clever way that they made a smaller game. Like Mini Metro, a game that has made millions and millions and millions of dollars, and it is a game about trains that doesn't have a single representation of a real train in it, right? How clever is that? They made a game about trains just using the style of tube maps, and it's sold millions and millions of copies, or it's made millions and millions of dollars, and it's just rectangles and stuff. And it works because the creative direction ties that into the way that tube maps are designed, right? This isn't just like a thing that some successful indie developers do. It is something that all successful indie developers do, is like project manage around their constraints so that they can make something that is good. Because the problem with dream games and trying to make a AAA game when you're an indie developer, like when you get told to make small games, people often interpret that as someone's trying to save you the effort of doing something that's too big. But it's not just that. It's like, we want you to make something of quality. And if you make something with more parts, you are going to spend less time on all the parts. You're going to spend less time on the connections between the parts. And that means the overall quality of the thing is going to go down, right? So if we're thinking of it from the perspective of just like an outside person, like a gamer who maybe wants to play your game, I would rather you put less in your game and all of it was done to a better level of quality. Now, that's not to say you should make a AAA game and just make one level and then say, well, you told me to make a small game, so I just made a really polished one level of a game. No, we want enough game for there to be a game to invest in and play for like multiple hours. But the way that you do that is you make a game with less parts. And you do that by thinking like, okay, I can't animate characters. How do I make a game where I can avoid having characters? This is why we have so many post-apocalyptic games. This is why we have so many games where there is some sort of narrative justification for the player being alone in an environment, like in Portal or Gone Home or any of those things. You have to always be designing with those constraints in mind, because that's how you make good stuff. And that's not like a weird trick. That's just like how all decent indie games get made in the end, is by someone limiting themselves to only making the game that they're capable of delivering to a good standard of quality, you know? So if I was a big Dark Souls fan, and I would say I'm a moderate Dark Souls fan. I've played all of them a little bit. I haven't finished any of the traditional Dark Souls. I've played all of Elden Ring through like twice. So I do really like Elden Ring. I think I probably like it because it's a bit more casual and open than Dark Souls. So I like Dark Souls. But if I wanted to make something that was like that, I would think about, okay, where is the time sink in this game that's going to make this game not possible for me to make? And I might try and make, like, a boss rush, for example. Boss rush is another genre of games that is very specifically like an indie game genre, because you can take an element of a bigger game and just focus in on that, and you can say, okay, we're just fighting the bosses. We don't have to do level design, we don't have to do all these locations, we don't have to think about an economy for this game, we're just fighting the bosses. And that means you can almost get to the level of like game feel and animation fidelity that you might, depending on where your skill set lies, that you might get out of a proper Souls-like, but you're not having to like deliver all that other stuff that makes that game work, right? You have to cut something somewhere. Yeah. Yeah, I want smaller games. So I want to show you another example actually while we're here before I log off for the day. So let me see if I've still got it. This was a game that popped up in a load of like gaming media was showing this off because the guy made a really impressive trailer. Oh, it's not, I don't have it anymore. Let's see if I can get it again. The guy had a really impressive trailer, and then people were like, oh my god, one person made this. and I did a game where I played the demo. And what I'll do is I'll go back to the VOD of this and I'll put a link to it. So anyone who wants links to the video about deck builders that I did a while ago, or the review of this, I will put them in the description of this video when it goes up as a VOD. But this looked so impressive, and then as soon as I played it, it was like, no, this is not good. This is not what you should do if you are trying to make an indie deck builder. It's not downloading. I want it to like reinstall over itself. How do I do that? Do I need to uninstall it deliberately? Download. Let's see if we can get it to work. This was one of the biggest disappointments I've had all year in terms of like how good something looked versus what it felt like when you started interacting with it. Funded on Kickstarter. New demo update. Across Boltane, each of its 4 settlements. 16 gigs demo, yeah. Oh look, mixed reviews. Interesting. And I wonder how many of the people that backed the Kickstarter have not played the demo. Because there's loads of great... Look, this game... What I felt when I looked at this is... Whoever... The guy who's making this, right? Art direction, great. All of this UI design, it's an acquired taste, but it very clearly says, you know, a particular style of Japanese video game. Not just Souls, other games as well, Vagrant Story and stuff like that. Very, very good. And then merged with this slightly fable-y, quirky, dark, gothic world. Like, really, really good. In terms of all the art assets, everything you see when you look at this, yeah, cool. But then, like the thing I said a minute ago about thinking about the scope of games made by bigger teams than yours, right? If Souls games don't have towns full of people, why the hell would you try and make a Souls game on your own and then stick towns full of people in it? Like, make it make sense. How do you come to the conclusion that that's a good idea and a thing you need to do in your game, right? You can do world building and have things that are suggested in the game without having it like a immersive place you can actually go to and hang out. And that's kind of like the Dredge example I gave a minute ago of like you go to the town but you don't actually go in the town, you know? Bob said, how do you feel about roguelike going from referring to games like Rogue and games with procedural levels and permadeath? So, to be totally honest with you, I got into Spelunky when it came out as a Xbox Live Arcade game. And before that point, I wasn't even familiar with the genre of roguelikes. I might have played one at some point, but I wasn't aware of it as a genre. I don't care about genre descriptors as like a purity thing. Yeah, Sub-Zero, Dragon's Dogma, yeah, that does, to be fair, that does have towns full of people. But yeah, Bob, I don't think, I think genre, I saw someone describe this really well yesterday on Blue Sky. It was like, so you've got, all models are wrong, but some are useful, right? That saying, right? So when you talk about genre, you need to think about why you're talking about it. And fans will often have taxonomical discussions about, is this one of these or is it one of these? And they're doing it to sort of like, they're almost doing it to argue for fun. Like it's part of how they perform being a gamer. They're like, I know the correct definition of this thing. Whereas I think when you're a designer, it's a bit different from that. And that's kind of what I was saying about deck builders earlier. It's like, if I say this is a fundamental quality of a deck builder, I'm not trying to gatekeep and say, therefore you shouldn't call something a deck builder if X, Y, Z. What I'm trying to say is, if you're making a deck builder, you should understand that the things that people generally enjoy about this are this set of qualities, right? Which is different from arguing about the genre of something in order to win a fight about how much of a gamer you are and how much you know about stuff, which is how most people engage with that kind of thing. But as people who are creating things, genre has a different purpose for us. Genre is more like, here is a bucket of types of here's like a rough guide to how a bunch of mechanics and thematic stuff go together to make people happy in a particular way, or to give them a particular type of challenge or experience. And we can kind of look through that and get it out and go, oh, how does this work? Oh, that's interesting. So I don't care if people call this a roguelike and this a roguelite or anything like that. But I think for us as developers, we should understand what people mean by the terms so that we don't misuse them or like confuse people. Yeah, Jay in the chat just said genre is all about expectation. Yeah, it is for the players, right? But for us, it's like we use the genre to say, okay, if I make one of these and I call it this on Steam, then is that going to confuse people? So my game that I just had open, I'm sort of like, I probably will refer to it as a roguelite, but I won't make that the top of the description because it's not actually procedural levels. It's you're building the levels as you go along, like in Blueprints, which is like, it's still a roguelike because it's a run-based game, so it appeals to the same sort of person. But let me see what tags Blueprints has. Puzzle, exploration, mystery, investigation, roguelite. Yeah. And then see what I've put on the... Let me get my Steamworks open. So I've just started building the Steam page for Dirt World for when it eventually goes up. Let me just see what tags I put on. I'm a big fan of the fact that they're called tags in Steam and it doesn't start to get into this murky category of what's a genre, what's a theme, you know? Because I did this video a while ago, again I'll link it if people want to look at it later, about the difference between genres and other classifications of things. Like, again, like cozy, for example. Cozy and horror are not really gameplay genres. They don't tell you about what you're doing in the game. They're like a mode. And it doesn't matter whether you call it a mode or whatever. I would say roguelike, a lot of the time, it's a format. It's a general shape of a game. It's a run-based game. And then things like cozy or horror are modes or moods. And then genre is like what you're actually doing. So yeah, what did I put? I started to fill this out. Where's the bit with the tags? Steam page soon, yeah. More really just to go through the process. Like, I haven't used the Steam backend before. I just usually make half a game, stick it on itch, and then never look at it again. That's... Store page descriptive tags, yeah. Just trying to find where they would be shown. But I put adventure at the top level, I think. Yeah, there it is. Thanks, Bobby. I mean, I'm not showing you the whole Steam backend. I'm just trying to find one particular set of tags. Yeah, I've filled these out, but they're you have applied 18 tags. Let's see what they are. I will just read them. Adventure, action adventure platformer puzzle, right? We know platformers aren't very. It's really funny. You see the data on this, and it's completely contradictory, right? Because it's like, no one likes platformers, they're the most unpopular thing. And it's like, yeah, that's understandable because everyone makes bad platformers. But then Metroidvania is in the mid to high range of popularity, and it's like, well, a Metroidvania is a platformer in the vast majority of cases. So I've put top level genres: adventure, genres, action adventure, platformer, puzzle, subgenres, puzzle platformer, roguelite, roguevania, because we're kind of building a Metroidvania using the roguelite mechanics, which is weird. And then 2D cute pixel graphics, atmospheric, dark fantasy, funny, post-apocalyptic retro, features, controller, procedural generation. I think that's reasonable. I've tried to avoid any that are too loose or don't really apply. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, so Marnix actually put a short up last week that was about Steam tags, and yeah, we had a discussion in our Discord. It wasn't specifically about that short, but it was reminding me about the point about, you know, is Pressure Wash Simulator an immersive sim? And it's like, well, no. And you can put those words together and decide, yes, it's an immersive simulator because it's a simulator that's immersive. And it's like, well, okay, but that's a word that has a meaning to a community of people, right? Which is kind of coming back to what we were saying a minute ago about how genre classifications have a different use depending on what you're trying to do with them at the time. So if you're trying to market something, then you're trying to find an affinity group that already exists and say, this belongs to you. That's kind of what marketing a game is, right? You're basically finding the person who would be the ideal person, but then say, this, you basically already want this, don't you? Give me some money. And if you do that in a wrong way because you've put immersive sim on, maybe it's not even for any nefarious reason. It's just because you don't actually understand that an immersive sim is a genre of game, which is kind of bringing us back to that thing from earlier of like, you should understand your game genres. You should understand the space you're working in. If you're making simulator games, you should probably be aware that there's a genre of games called immersive sims that are actually like puzzly, cerebral FPS stealth games and actually don't have anything to do with simulators, you know? Right, I'm going to answer one more question and then I'm going to log off because I'm hungry. STFNGLN. I don't know how to pronounce that. Stungerflunger said, what do you think of the make a toy first approach? I think it's good. I've talked about it a bunch of times. I literally talked about it in my last video, actually. Do that. Do what Stungerflunger said. Make a toy first. Yeah. I think you should always have a mechanical prototype of the main interaction you're doing in the game, and you shouldn't commit to making a game until you've done that. So make a toy first, yeah, but that is basically just what prototyping is anyway, right? And if you read and the other thing is understanding that you can do multiple prototypes of different parts of a game before you make a game. So let's say you make 3 toys. You go, oh, I like these mechanics. I like grappling hooks, and I like rhythm games, and I like this other thing. So you make these little toys of these different things. And then at the same time, something you should be doing, but lots of people don't because they are predominantly like software engineers or game engine users and don't think of themselves as artists. A thing you should also be doing is like art-based prototypes. We don't often think of those as prototypes, but they are if you think of prototyping as a process of like trying to test and validate things, right? So in Jesse Schell's Art of Game Design, he talks about this as parallel prototyping. So you make a gameplay prototype, and then also someone is doing like art tests, like making concept art, making mood boards, all of that kind of stuff, right? The problem people have is they treat the prototype as the early stage of the game, and they put everything they want to do into that prototype, right? So if you watch my first devlog for Dirt World, I was making the game with this very, very limited, simple art style and not really doing much with the art. And then I was making mood boards, and I was like doing sketches of how particular things in the game might look that never became art assets. They weren't in the right tile size. They were just separate drawings that were like, here's how the art might look. And I do that all the time. I have ideas for themes, things I'd want to make a game about, things I want to put in a game, and I don't commit to making a game until I've got a prototype of a game mechanic that works, and then an idea for some themes and some art, and they go together. But I think a lot of people, they either start with the prototype and they never add in the interesting juicy theme and art direction and stuff, so they end up with a boring thing that's just not appealing, or they start entirely with the art and the story and everything, and then they try and sort of like force a mechanic into it, and they're like, well, okay, I'm an artist who likes drawing fantasy characters, so I should make a game about fantasy characters that run around and fight and cast spells. And then they don't realize how difficult that is to implement, so they're sort of like forcing mechanics into their art and their storytelling, even though those mechanics don't sit within their skill set of what they're actually technically capable to achieve. And it would be better if they made like a dating simulator with their characters, or, you know, some other type of game that doesn't require to do something really, really hardcore, like feel and animation based to make it feel good. So I totally start with a toy, but also think about what other areas of your game can be prototyped. Like, how do you test whether the theme is appealing? How do you test whether the set of art assets you want to use are appealing? And the answer is usually not stick it all into the prototype until the prototype basically becomes this like wobbly version of the end game, you know? Because at that point you're basically going into full production by accident before you've validated the thing. If you want to get good at creative direction as well, I would say look at how it's done in other industries. So I don't know if you've seen this, but there's the Stranger Things Bible. There's stuff like this that is just out there, like from actual projects. From like real projects, real things that have had millions of dollars spent on them. And it's like, this is what the design, the kind of creative direction Bible for Stranger Things looks like. Montauk, an epic tale of sci-fi horror. Introduction. Right? And the thing I love about seeing documents like this is the graphic design of this document is setting the tone for the thing that doesn't exist yet, right? So you can do this. You can totally do this. If you watched that YouTuber's video recently about the game idea iceberg, they talked about, you know, doing little internal pitches to yourself where you just make like a 4-slide deck to say, here's my idea for a game. I used to make these all the time in my first job because we were working with publishers and we had to like send them new ideas every month. And sometimes those ideas would be like 4 or 5 slides in a pitch deck. But you do what they've done here with the Stranger Things one, you would start to think about the... Luke, exactly. You would start to think about the graphic design of the whole project up the start. Exactly what you're talking about, Luke, with Mini Metro. Mini Metro is the New York Metro. Can't remember the name of the designer. There's a specific designer that did all of that stuff, so it looks really specific. But when you're early on into your game and you're like, okay, my game is set in a high school, so we're going to do like varsity jacket style stuff and make everything look like it's like a plaque from Harvard or whatever, like a really specific academic style of things. You can start to research that, and that's like a form of prototyping, right? You prototype the toy, you don't put any art in the toy, and then you make like a mini game design document, but you deliberately dress it up to make it a little bit pretty, so you can just start to practice what the general art style and direction of that game would be before you need to do it. I'm not saying it's the only way to do things. I'm just saying that prototyping can involve any part of your game. You know, it can be like setting the mood for your game and what's supposed to be appealing about it. And this is, Vignelli, that's the guy. I think lots of people fall down on this because they're like, oh, but I'm not an artist. I'm a game person. I'm a software developer. And it's like, well, okay, but you've decided to make a video game and this matters. So, you know, either get used to the fact that this matters and start doing it, or don't make a video game, because it's called a video game for a reason. People look at it and they play it. And you can accept that you're not very good at this stuff, but you still need to accept that you need to learn to do it at some point. So just generally getting into how these things work in the creative industries. What does like a creative pitch for something look like? You know, this is just like, this is little bits of story fragments, and then the general graphic design style of Stranger Things, movie references to things they want it to be like specific shots. Oh, here's the Camp Hero Air Force Base. This is the kind of thing that we want in our TV show, right? You do the same sort of thing. So that's you know, I would say make a toy first, but also do this stuff. And then after you've done that a few times, you go, okay, I made these 5 toys, and these 2 are really good, and I've come up with these 3 or 4 different ideas for like game worlds, and these 2 are really good, and then eventually you fit it all together, and you're like, oh, okay, this is a good game. Whereas like technical people tend to start at the make a toy thing and then never do the creative direction to make it into something exciting, and artsy fartsy people tend to start at this side and never do the make a toy thing, so they end up going, oh, my game needs to have an inventory system and characters that run around and talk to each other and fight and stuff, and it's like, you're not going to be able to deliver that to a high degree of quality, so you need to start with a toy first, and your toy might be a backpack battle simulator or a virtual pet or something much simpler, and that doesn't mean you can't still have all of that cool stuff around it, right? This, again, coming back to that idea of there are indie game genres, and this is why we get things like the backpack battler, the shop simulator, where it's set in a big rich fantasy or cyberpunk world, but you never leave the shop, right? They are genres that come out of the constraints of being a small indie developer, and you're only ever going to be a successful indie developer if you pay attention to how those games use their constraints to produce their designs. If you're always going, oh, I love this Nintendo game, oh, I love this Rockstar game, I wish I could make that, you're just going to make trash, because you can't do that, because you're not 200 people, you're one person, right? So yeah, that's my positive words of encouragement for today. I hope you have a lovely day, and do something sensible with your life, which is not make Zelda or Dark Souls. Or if you do, work out the clever way you're going to scope it down and make something interesting without spending 5 years on something that you never finish, you know? Right, I will see you all soon. The stream didn't cut out, so tomorrow's stream is still on. I was basically saying if my stream keeps cutting out today, then I'm going to pre-record tomorrow and just do a video instead of a stream. But it looks like the internet is working for today. So tomorrow I am looking at a couple of color matching games, which is going to be an interesting one of like, how do you adapt to sort of match 3 color matching Zoomer or Candy Crush type game and make it feel like an indie game? I think that's just an interesting question in general. We'll see how well they did. And yeah, thanks for all popping in and for your questions and comments and everyone who had interesting stuff to say. And yeah, good luck with whatever you're doing.